we wanted to go ahead and drop our top 10 football players of all time list. And I think it's fair to just go ahead and get straight into it. No messing about, no beating around the bush here. I
No
want to
beating
go
around
ahead.
the bush. Yeah.
I want to go ahead and get your top 10 list of the greatest footballers of all time.
All right, going on right into the first of the top 10. I got Ronaldinho at 10, Garincha at 9, 8 Di Stefano, 7 Johan Cruyff, 6 Zinedine Zidane, 5 Maradona, 4 Pelé, 3 R9 Ronaldo El Fenomeno, number 2 Cristiano Ronaldo, and number 1 Lionel Messi.
Not what I expected your list to be. Not gonna lie here.
The valid list. That's a true man's list.
So do you want to explain more of your list? Or do you want me to give my list?
I think you should give your list, and then we'll talk about our contradictions, and then we'll be able to get a chance to question each other's our placements of each player.
Okay, so starting from 10, I got number 10 George Best, number 9 Maldini, number 8 Pele, number 7 Garincha, number 6 R9, number 5 Johan Cruyff, number 4 Zinedine Zidane, number 3 Diego Maradona, number 2 Cristiano Ronaldo, and number 1 Lionel Andres Messi.
Okay. The only real head scratcher out of yours is Maldini.
He's the best defender of all time. You got to have Maldini in the top 10.
Maldini.
If you're going to have any defender in your top 10, for me, it has to be Maldini. It has to be. He's the best defender of all time.
It'd probably be a conversation him or Beckenbauer, but I guess
I left out some guys, bro. Like you could say, I should have.
Obviously, you left out.
I should have had.
You left Di Stefano out because you're a Madrid racist, basically. If being racist to a club was a thing, you'd be that. But other than maybe I think the bigger one people are going to be looking at is that you had Garincha over Pele.
We got it, bro. That's no debate.
Look, and I'm probably not the right person to be having this conversation with because I've talked to you this many times behind camera that I always think Garincha never gets as much credit as he deserved. But just the sheer fact that Pele has all the records, he has the goal accolades, that's something that Garincha does not have compared to Pele. That he doesn't have that 1,000 goals or
of course not.
God knows how many goals Pele has, but
no, he doesn't.
That's why I did have Garincha in my top 10. I think he deserved to be there because he hearing people describe how Garincha played even back in the day was like, this guy was the greatest dribbler to ever walk planet Earth. So,
yeah,
this guy was class, and he played a huge role in that second World Cup, in the second World Cup that Pele has, that he only played like a handful of games in the group stage
and then he was
getting
injured.
It was basically, it was the Grincha show. So, that one, I'm not going to give you much flack for that one because I can understand why, but obviously I give Pele up there because I just love Pele as a human being. I appreciate what he's done to the game.
If you go on the streets of Brazil, you are hearing that how underrated Garincha was. Look, besides the fact that I also agree with what you say, Garincha severely underrated. Obviously because he was playing with Pele, who gets all of the credit. I would say because look, the stats are what the stats are. He has 3 World Cups. He has over 1,000 goals, and
1,000 girls too.
1,000 girls too. But he has 1,000 goals, and to be fair, it's 1,000 goals and counting because he goes in his backyard and scores a couple more.
He's still scoring.
But my thing is, Eusebio himself said that he thought Garincha was a better player. Pele has said that Garincha could do things that he could never do.
To be fair, though, Pele says that about everybody. I swear to God, I've seen him say this about every single player that's ever played. That say that he's better.
Obviously, that's Pele being humble. But Eusebio, he doesn't have a thing in a boot in the race.
He doesn't have a hat in the ring.
And he went out of his way. He said he thought Garincha was the better player. And look, I think that's why I have them right there next to each other. You could flip flop them. You could say Pele 7, Garincha 8, or you could say Garincha 7, Pele 8. I think, look, they were probably that's why they're interconnected. They played around the same time, and Pele doesn't have 3 World Cups if it's not for Garincha. He doesn't. And you could say the same, about Garincha. He probably doesn't do what he's able to do without Pele. So they kind of are intertwined. But I think I want to give Garincha the credit he deserves, and I think I'm backing Eusebio. He knows ball.
Backing
I'm
Eusebio.
backing Eusebio. He himself said Garincha was the better player. So I think it's not crazy to have Garincha over him. I think the thing what people would say about me having Pele is not having him higher on the list. Having him at number
Yeah.
8. Obviously, I think people are going to question that, but to me, I don't think you can convince me that Pele is better than R9. Pele is better than Johan Cruyff, better than Zinedine Zidane, better than Maradona. I don't even think, like, to me, I don't know if
I
I could be
I
like I don't
I
know if I
think
could be convinced of that.
Pele's comparable with Maradona. I think that
Comparable,
I because obviously in
comparable, but
my list
the
I have
better player
Pele just better than Maradona, but obviously that was a debate on itself when Maradona was coming up
playing.
through play. That was a bit of
Yeah,
a beef. I mean, I remember watching a video on that they started off like really liking each other, but obviously Maradona towards the later end of his career was a bit of like a black sheep per se, but I think another thing within my top list, I had R9 very highly.
you
El
did. Where
Fenomeno,
did you have him? Number 3?
number 3. And unfortunately, we didn't have the ability to see him have as long as a career as we would want to. But when he was here, my God, was he here? This guy was, people thought Erling Haaland was this, record breaker. R9 Ronaldo was Haaland before Haaland was born. Like R9 Ronaldo had the skill of Ronaldinho, the finishing of Ronaldo, and that Brazilian flair that every Brazilian have. Like this guy was scoring literally anywhere on the pitch. Anywhere on the pitch. As soon as the guy touches the ball, he's a goal threat. And it's unfortunate that he was martyred with injuries and health issues. I mean, we all know
Yeah,
what he that the controversy that was him playing in that World Cup final where Nike were forcing him, or that he was having seizures before the game. It's unfortunate, but
yeah.
I rate him very highly as one of the greatest players to ever play the game, even though he didn't play for as long. I mean, when he was here, just God, he was perfection. That's why they gave him the name El Fenomeno, just
Yeah,
how good he was.
I think R9 at his peak, which and I think for thing like the thing is,
It
at his
depends how
peak
you look at like top 10. Like I think his peak
was higher
is
than
like
most.
hot. Like if we're talking about purely peak, I think his peak is possibly even better than Cristiano Ronaldo. Like it's up there. Like his peak, it's hard to like rate people by their absolute peaks, but
Yeah,
I think his in my list carries him very high up that list.
yeah. I'm not gonna sit here and say that. Like I got R9 at number 6 on the list, partially because I'm not looking at it just based on the very
The
peak of the
peaks, you're
mountain
looking
that
at
he
more
hit,
like
but
yeah.
I'm also looking at how long was he able to be at that peak, and where like how did he fall off, things of that nature. And I'm not gonna lie here. I watched the 2002 World Cup final a few weeks ago. It popped in my YouTube recommendation, and I watched it. And he did score two goals in that match towards the end of the match, but the amount of chances he missed, and I was like, dang, bro, is R9 a fraud, bro? And then he ended up doing what he did, but I was like, you know, this guy was a phenomenal player, but I don't have him. I don't have him as highly as you do. I can't say that I got him over Maradona. I can't say that, but that takes away nothing from how great of a player he was. Because at his peak, if injuries didn't derail him, he is probably that number 3, no doubt, and he probably could be even number 2 if injuries never derailed him. Probably could still be up there with having a resume like Cristiano Ronaldo. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think that's crazy to say, but for me, he falls a little bit down there, but I'm still taking him over Pele. I'm still taking him over
Just
Garincha.
taking him over Pele and Garincha.
Like let's
Yeah.
not get too.
I
I'm not
did
gonna
as
get too
well.
carried away and say that R9
I think
is bad.
you had Zidane at 4. I had him at 6. I think that's comparable. I think Zidane is another one where like not a lot of people talk about. I don't hear Zidane a lot and
Because I
like
think,
you know,
especially recently, because of I think what he did as a manager potentially has outshined what he did as a player,
yeah, because
which is crazy
a
to say.
hundred, 100%, Zidane has the greatest overall career in in like almost sports, just because this guy, one did everything he did as a player, and then won 3 Champions Leagues in a row. Like, who does
As a
this?
manager. And
And
and and he basically just walked away from that team, and he hasn't
he
come
just
back to
walked away.
management since, and, rumors are having it that he's coming for that France job, and
And
imagine how
I'd
imagine
like to
how
see
much
him
better
there.
his resume is going to
Look,
get,
if he wins a World Cup, I don't even know what to look. It, I don't even know what to say, to be honest, man. Like, this guy was, I had him. For me, it was like, with this top 10, it's very difficult. I think, top 10 in football is the most difficult top 10 to make within any sport, just because of how old football is. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
original sport. I mean, how many, compared to any other sport, it's the longest it's ever been. And I think my 4 through 10, there could be interchangeable. Like,
Yeah, I
no,
agree with that.
and it's like, mine came down like, Johan Cruyff or Zidane. It's so hard to compare those two. I mean, how it's Johan Cruyff. He has a move named after him. Like, it's
That's
the
what I'm saying.
Cruyff turn.
Like, realistically, my 4 through 6 of Zidane at 4, Cruyff at 5, and R9 at 6, if you rearrange that in any order, you could agree with it. I it's not blasphemy, It's like those guys are so close and they're comparable, and, that we all know how good they were, So
And another one I did want to mention that wasn't on your list. I had Ronaldinho, and
yeah,
that was another one similar to R9 to El Fenomeno, that his career did not last as long as it should have. Partially due to his own doing. That wasn't mostly health. It was like his life choices. But
I,
I think I've never seen a more skilled human being in my entire life than Ronaldinho.
if I were to have a number 11, it would be Ronaldinho. For me, I'm a little bit biased because I do like George Best as a player, and I feel like he's an underrated baller. I had to get him in my top 10 because
I think weirdly enough, George Best and Ronaldinho are kind of like. I mean,
they're comparable.
unfortunately, like the choices they made in their lives were kind of. They both had like a drinking problem,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But they are comparable footballers. But I'm gonna ride with the old side. Just anybody that's never watched football, just watch a Ronaldinho highlight reel. Like, this shit is like out of a video game. Like, this is like something that you think is not allowed, not possible. And you know he fully defines what a Brazilian player is. He defines that samba style of football. He is the most purest Brazilian, and it's so unfortunate. Someone with so much talent, because I think he was just born with this talent that other people weren't. Compared to, like, maybe like a Messi or Ronaldo. Like, those guys had to work very hard to get to where they were. Ronaldinho just had that. Like, this is stuff you're just born with. This little flick in your brain to have, this touch with the ball. And he was gorgeous to watch, but he didn't last as long. But I do have to give him my props, as on his day, top 10 greatest players ever play the game.
So where did you have Maradona on your list? 6?
No, I'm Maradona at 5. Just
5?
just not my top 5. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
Uh,
like,
not too crazy.
I, yeah, not that crazy.
Once again, I think you showed a little bit of your attacking bias. I had to sneak a defender in there.
It's sneaker defender. I was debating a goalkeeper. I was gonna put Iker Casillas at that
Yashin?
10, because
Iker
I
Casillas.
put Iker Casillas. Look. We're talking about the greatest keeper ever. This is Iker Casillas. That's him. This guy's literally won everything. A part of probably the most winning Spanish team, or winning national team ever, that spanned of where they won the Euros, World Cup, and then Euros. That's the most dominant run by a nation we probably ever seen, other than to the early Brazil days. But if I was going to put anybody, it was going to be him. And obviously, like, as a defender, it's it's either Maldini, Beckenbauer, or Sergio Ramos. But I feel like that's too much of a bias to throw Sergio Ramos in my top 10. So I'm somewhat self-aware, so I'm not gonna go that far into another one. I had my bias and I had Di Stefano in there, but it's Di Stefano, man. I mean, then I
No,
have Di Stefano. The amount of goals
I
this
want to
guy
make
did,
a
and this another guy, Pele said Di Stefano was the greatest player he's
he
ever
did.
seen. So I mean,
He
that's
did.
what Pele.
I want to I want to use that as the segue to make a point that I've been wanting to make here, and it's
Oh
a point
God,
that look, I obviously I have a couple in here. I have a couple old timers. You know, I got Garrincha, I got Pele, and even you could say George Best. He played in the 70s. That's kind of old.
you're ageist.
No, but what I'm gonna say here is for somebody like me and you, it's very difficult to have a true opinion on a Di Stefano, on a Pele, on a
Because it's
Garrincha.
all that word of tongue of
It's
what we've
word of
heard.
mouth. It's you know you can watch some. The thing is highlights. I don't like. I love watching highlights, but highlights don't tell you the full story. If you would just watch the highlights of, for example, with the match I talked about earlier, the
Ronaldinho.
2002 World Cup, R9 looks like the greatest striker of all time. But when you watch the full match, he missed chances. He missed some chances. So if you can cut up any highlight any way to make a guy look phenomenal, like the greatest player of all time, you really have to sit there and watch a guy fully, like the full match. What does he do off the ball? You know, is he wasteful in his chances? And the highlights don't always tell that as a full story because we're watching a Pele highlight reel. We're gonna see we're gonna
There's
see
barely
a thousand
cameras
goals.
back then.
We're gonna see 1,000 goals. We're gonna see all the brilliant skill moves. But we're not gonna see when he lost the ball, when he missed some tap in, some easy chances, and that's what paints the full picture here. So where I'm getting at this is it's very difficult to have a true opinion, and that's just why. Like, look, anybody that's our age, and even we're getting to like if you're 40 or whatever, how can you have like such a hard opinion on some of these 1950s and 60s players? Like you weren't there, like
They were
it's
there.
like so maybe it is a little bit of bias from me, having Pele at 8, having them at 7, but a lot of that was because I think that I have them at that point because I don't think that these guys would be where that they are if they played in the modern game. So I think that puts them falling down my list a little bit, and then also it's that combined with the fact that I can't really give a true opinion on these guys because it's not like I can go back and watch a bunch of Pele games, but there's barely any cameras.
There wasn't
You
camera.
can
I
see the
mean, we're
highlight
watching
reels of
black and
what's
white.
around. You can find some stuff, but for the most part, like my point is like, you know, if you talk to your granddad if you really want to hear about Pele, and that's the point. You told me, your mom had said that when she watched it, but Garrincha was better than Pele. You got to go with
Well,
word of mouth
let
sometimes.
let what well, obviously my mom did not watch them. She like it's a thing that got passed down. It gets passed down. Obviously, your grandparents pass it down to how like she was told that like, and that's what she believes that Garincha was so highly because obviously she grew up in Peru. It's closer, in that South American region where they talk about their South American greats, and Garincha gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah. And so basically that's the point that I'm trying to make here. Like I don't like I'm not gonna complain about anybody having a Di Stefano in their list or having a Pele at number 1 or whatever. But how can you really have a true opinion on these guys? Like I just don't quite understand that. Like because you'll see people who die on the hill of saying Pele number 1, bro, or like
But
you like having a bunch of 1950s
even yeah,
players
even
in there.
before this, we were looking at a lot of top 10 lists, and I still think it's blasphemy that I ran into this list that had Maradona still above Messi, and they literally have the updated picture of Messi holding the World Cup. It's like, on what basis are you going off of that Maradona is still better than Messi? What does Messi have to do, man? But like, look, that's the only thing. Look, if I ever ask anybody their top 10 and it doesn't start with Messi, then I'm kind of already tuned out. I'm not actually there.
And
You,
I'll even
you can
add
tell
to
me
that
whatever. I don't care if you're 80 years old, dude.
if
You
it
were
doesn't
old enough
start
to
with
see
Messi
Messi.
and Ronaldo. Ronaldo's got to be 2. I'll add to
You
that.
know, I'll give them a little leeway. And, if you want to, if this is like maybe like a 60-year-old guy telling me, oh, you weren't around to see, this or this and that, that's fine. But there's only one. There's one you have to get right, and that is the number one top guy. That's the one person you have to get right. I don't care. I love Cristiano, but I'm willing to sacrifice him if they, if we're just gonna can we all come to this consensus that there's only one number one? There's no debate. And this is something I saw a little, I don't know just how as people are. I don't know if one game is going to convince people that, it's like the same thing that we talk about Ronaldo and Jordan. Like, is there anything if you're
Ronaldo and
already
Jordan.
no, LeBron and Jordan. My bad. LeBron. That's what I meant. LeBron and Jordan. That like, is there if you're a Jordan supporter and if you think Jordan's your GOAT, is there anything LeBron can do to surpass Jordan? Because if you kind of already set in to what you believe, as people, as kind of how we are, we're never really gonna change. And I think the people that didn't think Messi was the GOAT before still don't think he's the GOAT now, even that he won the World Cup. Even
There
though
are
it's gonna
some
be
people who flip flop though. Some
yeah,
people.
like I don't know if I think
I've seen some people
if
on social media.
I think there's a couple people I've seen a couple of YouTubers, but it's like even if like I think it's a bit silly that it took them that long because it's something
I agree
we've
with.
already known.
I agree with that.
Like we already know, but I think it's a bit silly that okay, it took him, took him winning this one game to prove that to you, but like he's kind of already been this for the past 15 years. Like he's
Yeah.
been this, but I can still understand that like how people are. I don't know if a lot of people are going to be convinced that after that, but I think it's more to the point to where it's just more ridiculous. It's just going to be more like if someone still doesn't think Messi's the GOAT, it's going to be like, okay, now you're just talking out your ass, man. I mean, there's just no point.
Yeah. Well, like I mean, if we've had this conversation. We both are in such agreement that Messi is the GOAT, and I agree with the point that you said. Like if I'm here in a top 10 list and it's not starting with Lionel Andres Messi after him winning the World Cup, I don't want to hear the rest of the list.
So
I don't want
your
to hear it.
list.
Don't
Good.
even
It's
don't
gonna
even
start
keep.
with like Pele, Maradona, Cruyff, Garincha. Have all the old timers in it.
Like go ahead and jog on, bro. Like jog on, lad. I'm not
Keep
listening
going.
to
Keep
like
going.
I'm not listening to your list, son, because
Carry on.
there is only one man to start off your list, and then after that, you can have it up for debate. And what's interesting is, this list is going to change potentially even within by the time 2026 World Cup comes around. Mbappe might be entering this list. At that number 10 spot, number 9 spot. God knows.
He's coming for those guys, man.
He
I
is.
mean,
I
I see this entire list, and nobody on this list has a hat trick in the World Cup final. I mean, for all the years of football, none of these guys do.
I think genuinely by the time 2026 rolls around, like you would assume he might be able to get a Champions League, and by then a couple Ballon d'Ors potentially.
I'd hope so. I'd
I mean,
hope he'd have a Champions League by
I would hope
2026.
so. And then I mean, you were talking about. I would probably put him over George Best at that point. Yeah, I'll put him over George Best.
I think he's already. If we're talking about where Mbappe is right now, it'd be hard. I think he's definitely top 25 already.
25. That's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say. That's what I was gonna
I say
say.
top. I say he's already within the top 25 players ever at 24 years old. I mean, that's something to behold. I mean,
Yeah.
but we'll have to see where he's at in 2026. I mean, God knows.
I mean, but that's like a 27-year-old. That's like prime, pretty much. He's
That will be his prime. That will be his
Oh
absolute
my.
peak of his powers.
Well, I mean, look. I mean, imagine the resume. I mean, he imagine he gets to a third World Cup final in a row.
What if he wins the Euros?
He might.
He could win the Euros.